Tonight I'd like to dedicate this performance to my husband's grandfather, Steve Pinder, who was drafted into the Army in World War II and went into the Air Force. He was actually injured in training in a plane crash. 5 of the 10 people on board died in that crash, so he was sent home on injury leave, and he started a swing band with my husband's grandma Eleanor, who was the singer in the band. So I pretty much feel like I am living out my grandma's life in this show, and Steve, this one's for you.
Tonight I dedicate this performance of Bandstand to my 2 grandfathers, Killian Joseph Heitzman, who is a Korean War veteran, and also Jack Sherman Tennis, who was a Chief Petty Officer for World War II, Pearl Harbor survivor, and served on the USS Missouri. Love you guys. Thank you.
I dedicate tonight's performance to my great uncle, George Sugai, and he actually served in the famous 442nd, and it was a group of Japanese Americans fighting in World War II.
Dedicating this performance to my brother, Nick Bender, former U.S. Marine Corps captain.
I dedicate this performance to my 2 grandfathers, Marlon K. Weech, who served in the Navy, and Robert Peterson Sr., who served in the Air Force. This one's for you.
I'd like to dedicate my opening night performance to 2 people. The first would be my dad, who all my performances are going to go out to my dad. He was a captain in the Army in Vietnam, and he also went back and worked for the DoD in Vietnam. Then I'd also like to dedicate the performance to my grandfather, Mac Shipman, who's still alive actually, and he was Army Rifle Infantry in World War II.
I dedicate tonight's performance of Bandstand to both of my grandfathers who served in World War II. This is my papu, Joseph W. Shinners, who was Army private and radio operator, and this is my grandpa Louis Kasperzak, who was an airplane mechanic and met a young nursing student named Genevieve at a USO dance, who later became my grandmother. I like to think that swing dance is part of the reason I'm on the planet, and this one's for you guys.
Tonight I dedicate my performance to my cousins Gregory, Jesse, and Kathleen, who are still serving in the VA, and my friend Danny, who was in Vietnam, and most importantly, my dad. So there. Thank you.
I'm dedicating tonight's performance to my father, Richard Cott. Rick, my dad, flew A-10 bombers in the Air Force. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, won the Top Gun award, so he's the real maverick, and this is for him.
Tonight I'd like to dedicate my performance to my great uncle, Lawton Johns, who was in the Navy in World War II. I never got to meet him, but this one's for you, Lawton. Thank you.
I'd like to dedicate this performance on opening night to Al Packard, who is my dad's father, who served and drove a tank in the Army, and my mother's father, Thomas Rickey, who served, I believe, in the Army as well, and my wife's grandfather, Dick Keeley, who also was a serviceman.
I dedicate this evening's performance to my father, Corporal Napoleon Morrow, who served in Korea September 21st, 1950 to September 17th, 1952. Thanks, Dad. When you came home, I know you decided that your sons were never going to go to war. I appreciate that. Thank you for your service.
Tonight, I dedicate this performance to Jerry Dotto. He served in the South Pacific during World War II.
Tonight I dedicate my performance to my great uncle Angus's son, Robert McVitie, who went down with his ship off the coast of Normandy, 1944, Christmas Day.
I'd like to dedicate my opening night performance to both grandfathers, Charles Carroll and Joseph Seaman, who were both World War II vets, and particularly my Grandpa Joe Grompy loved musicals, and he loved musical theater. He loved taking my mom to musicals, so this one's for him.
I dedicate tonight's performance to both of my grandfathers, Raymond Transalito, who served in the Army during the Korean War, and Robert Clayton, who served in the Navy during World War II.
Tonight I dedicate my performance to my grandfather, Robert Bartholomew Patty Sr. He served as a combat medic in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge and 4 other major European campaigns under General Patton and General Bradley.
I dedicate this performance to my dad, David Cusack, and my brother Ryan Cusack, both a couple of Air Force guys.
And tonight I dedicate the performance of Bandstand to my grandfather, Anthony Casiato, who was a World War II and a Korean War veteran. He was an engineer in the Navy and served on 3 aircraft carriers, the USS Midway and the USS Bonhomme Richard. Thanks, Grandpa.
Tonight, I dedicate my performance to both of my surviving grandfathers, Edward Sebecki and Michael Varazin Sr., who served in the Korean War. Love you.
I would like to dedicate this evening's performance to my dad, Lynn Level. He was in the Navy, shipped out to California, was getting ready to go overseas to Japan, and the war ended. But he was there with my mom and my older brother, who at the time was 4 years old. So this is for you, Lynn, and my mom, and the sacrifices that she's made taking care of the family. So thank you. I love you.